Welcome to another macaron baking session. Now today we're going to make something very similar to what we made the other week. We're making some coffee macarons. Now the actual meringue shells are very similar, well, identical actually really, to what we made for the tiramisu ones. It's just the filling's different for this. Okay, so we're going to start off exactly like we always do. This is from Pies and Tacos again. So what I've got is I've already blitzed some almond flour in my blender, 105 grams of that, and I've sifted it into the bowl along with 105 grams of icing sugar. Got 100 grams of egg white. I've got a teaspoon of espresso powder like we used in the tiramisu ones, so not instant coffee, actually, you know, ground coffee if you like. I've got 4 grams of egg white powder, and then I've got 100 grams of caster sugar. Now I've put a pan on like before and just going to bring that up to the boil, and we're going to dissolve the sugar into the egg whites over the heat. Before we do that, I'm going to add the egg white powder to the sugar. Okay, and just going to sort of mix that in to the sugar. And then we're just going to tip them egg whites in there. Put that over the heat. Remember, we do not want the bowl touching the water, and we do not want this getting too hot. The idea is just simply to help dissolve the sugar into the egg white. Okay. If we don't get too hot, start cooking the egg white, we'll end up with wrinkly macarons. You know, I'm wrinkly ones, don't you? So I'm just going to keep this going for a little bit. Okay. And when that sugar's dissolved, so it no longer feels sort of gritty, if you like, we're just going to take it off the heat, and then we'll start whisking up properly. Right, so now all I'm going to do is, with the electric mixer, I'm now going to whisk this up, and we want it to be forming peaks, okay, sort of soft peaks, so when we lift it up, it sort of stays not quite starting to fall over at the top. So that's the meringue whisked up. So now we're just going to pour in that sifted icing sugar, powdered sugar if you're American, okay, and the almond flour, 105 grams of each, remember. Now I should have said again that the egg white powder is optional, but it does help with the meringue. So all I'm going to do now is, like before, we're just going to fold that in, gently folding it in, going round, scraping the sides of the bowl, the bottom of the bowl, and we're just going to keep going gently until we've combined it, but all in, and then just before we think it's finished, we're going to tip in that espresso powder. Okay. So again, like before when we did the tiramisu ones, if you want, you can just blend it all the way through, but the way we're doing it at this stage, we're going to sort of get it sort of uneven, if you like. Now the trick with this is that when you lift it up, it should pour off of your spatula. So if it's not doing that, just keep folding it a little longer. Okay, and then when it pours off, then you can sort of make circles of 8s or whatever. You know it's done. Okay, so I think this is actually getting quite close because it's well mixed in. I mean, one thing we're trying not to do is knock all that air out. Okay, so I'm just going to get this ready for the espresso, and then we'll be ready to pipe. So I've got me figures of 8. So now I'm just going to sprinkle in that espresso powder, and we're just going to do a few more folds. So like I say, we're not after getting it all blended nice and even. Okay, now you should have already prepared a bag. Now I'll put this with, I think it's about a 1/2 inch nozzle in this bag, and we're now just simply going to fill the bag ready for piping. Okay, now I've already got my trays. I've actually invested in some silicone mats with the templates on. Okay, because I keep drawing out templates on baking powder. Okay, so I'm just going to get this filled up and we'll get ready to pipe. Right, I've piped them out. Basically, I'm starting to run out the bottom, so they've gone. I'd lost most of it by the time I turned that on to come back here to pipe it. So, got 2 trays worth. Now it's just a matter of banging. And one for luck. So that should hopefully bring the air bubbles to the top. And now I'm just going to go around with a cocktail stick and get rid of the obvious ones. And then we're just going to let it stand on the side to dry out, get a nice skin over the top. So it depends on what the weather's like. Last time it was almost an hour before we were like that. But if we don't get that skin over it, it's going to crack it for the air bubbles in it and everything else. So when it's close to being like that, then we're going to preheat the oven, and we're going to preheat it at 160. The oven's up to temperature. Okay, so I've got my 2 trays, they're dry now. So we do 1 tray at a time. We're going to cook them about 15 minutes. And we're going to cook them for 5 minutes and rotate the tray. That's simply just to make sure they're all evenly cooked. Okay, so we'll get these 2 trays baked off, and then once they've started to cool, we get on with the filling. So the shells are now cooked and cooled it down, or cooling down, most of them. I've paired them up, so now we're going to make the filling. Okay. So actually this is going to be an attempt at a 2-tone filling. Could go horribly wrong. So we've got some cream cheese. I've got 56 grams of cream cheese. Okay, and then I've got some softened butter. How much of that? I've got 28 grams of butter. In that goes. And our first job is just to cream these together for a few minutes. Now they're creamed together. Now I've got 187 grams, it seems an odd amount, but it's because I've converted from cups, of sifted icing sugar. Whoops. Okay, so now that's going to go in there, and we're now just going to incorporate that in. Now I'm going to start by gently mixing it with the spatula, just to get it a little bit, well, I suppose combined or moist, so that when I then put the mixer in there, we don't get clouds of icing sugar. So all we're going to do is, once I'm ready, I'm just going to put the whisk in there, whisk it for a couple of minutes to get it all thoroughly combined. Now I'm going to add some Kahlua, because obviously we want the coffee flavour. If you don't want Kahlua, or haven't got any Kahlua, use vanilla essence, and I'm going to use 1/2 teaspoon of that. And again, we're just going to blend that in. Now, before we have to split it, because we're making 2-tone, we've got 1/2 teaspoon of espresso powder, like we put into the shells. Okay, I couldn't think of what I was doing there. So again, I'm just going to mix this all through. Now, what I want to do is remove 1/2 of this mixture into another bowl, and then I'm going to cover the 1/2 that I'm not doing any more with cling film, because we don't want it sort of drying out too much. So it's simply a matter of roughly splitting it about 1/2. I think that will do. Okay, like I say, covering that with cling film, and then we're going to colour the other bit. Now I've got 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. So this is to make the mocha half of the filling. And what we want to do is I thought I'll use a spatula, because if I put that thing in there it's going to go everywhere. So of course it's just gone everywhere. So like with before with the icing sugar, I'm just going to mix it a little bit with my spatula, and then I'll give it the whisk. Now if this looks like this is a bit drier than the other one, okay, we want to try and keep the consistency the same, because we're going to be piping it at the same time, and if one ends up being a bit thicker than the other, it will come out, you know, one will come out in preference to the other, which obviously we don't want. So now I'm just going to whip this up. So I've covered that other bowl for now. We're now going to need some cling film, and I've got my piping bag, and I've put like an open star shaped tip in the bag. Okay, but what we're going to do is we're going to take some cling film. There's a cutting edge on that, there we go. And I'm just going to lay this out, and what we're going to do is actually onto this we're going to put first off the uncoloured, and we want to go up to the end of the paper, end of the cling film, okay, and then just put it in a strip down there, okay. So I'll sort of show you in a second. So I've laid that out. I've got it going up to the edge of the cling film, because we don't want any sort of too much cling film over the end. And now I take my coloured one, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay that alongside the uncoloured one, again going up to the end there, okay. So I'm just going to get that all out. I'll come back. Now what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to now roll this, okay, in the remaining cling film, and this is sort of a little bit tricky. Okay, this is where what we want to do is get this down in as best we can, down into the bottom of that bag, okay. And then the idea being that as we squeeze it out, it should come out two-toned. So let me just get my shells ready to do, okay. Right, so now we're going to, at the moment, because the white that seemed to come out first, I'm only getting white out. Here we go. So all I'm going to do is now just circle around on each half, and we're getting a nice two-toned filling. So it's just a matter now of doing all that. Now hopefully we're going to have some left over. You'll see what we'll do with that afterwards. So our final little touch, okay, might have to just be with a slightly bigger one, some of them a bit bigger than others. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pipe, whoops, a little rosette, if you like, in the middle, and then I've got some chocolate coated coffee beans, and we're just going to sit it on the top. So there you go, there is your coffee macaron. We'll have to taste it, aren't we? Perfect. Shell's perhaps a little bit overdone. But you definitely get the coffee, particularly because of that espresso bean. Perfectamundo.